let's just leave that report and take you straight back to Birmingham. Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, appearing on stage there at the CBI, about to make a speech that has been widely trailed in advance. Let's listen.
Thank you, conference. It's a real privilege to be here in Birmingham to address you at such a pivotal moment for our country. And here at the Vox, in the NEC, a place where so many greats of music and theatre have played. Bob Dylan, David Bowie, Justin Bieber, he's coming here soon. And who could forget, in 2019, the all-time favourite of the CBI, Peppa Pig. Yes, she played here too. But look, I'm here today to talk about Labour's plan for Britain. How together we can build a fairer, greener, more dynamic country. A nation where working people succeed, where aspiration is rewarded. A Britain with its confidence, its hope, and its future back. I come with a simple message. Labour is ready. Ready to give Britain the clear economic leadership it needs. Ready to work with you to drive our country forward. Not just a pro-business party, but a party that is proud of being pro-business, that respects the contribution profit makes to our jobs, growth, and our tax base, that gets that working people want success as well as support, understands that backing private enterprise is the only way Britain pays its way in the world. And mark my words, this is a matter of conviction for me, and I've united my party behind it. Anyone who came to our conference this summer, anyone I've met since being leader, more than 100 CEOs in the last 6 months alone, knows this already. This is a different Labour Party, and there's no going back. We're ready for partnership. And let's be frank, because we need to be. Partnership is not a nice to have, it's now an economic imperative. I don't want to waste too much time today talking about the government, but the economic damage they've done to our country is immense. They've put our public finances in a perilous position, wasted the chance to transform our potential in an era of low interest rates, created an economy with weak foundations. This isn't about global shocks. That's just an excuse. Nobody criticises the government for not anticipating the war in Ukraine or denies the war was the spark for the cost of living crisis. But the war didn't ban onshore wind, the war didn't scrap home insulation, and the war didn't stall British nuclear energy. And when it comes to economic growth, the verdict of the former Chancellor is right. They've created a vicious cycle of stagnation. And that's why every crisis hits Britain harder than our competitors. The only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic. Disposable income back to 2013 levels. The worst decade for growth in 2 centuries. That's why we need a new partnership. Economic growth is the oxygen for our ambitions, the lifeblood of a strong society and a dynamic economy. But we have to confront the reality of our position. The lessons of the past 12 years can't be ignored. Just stop for a moment and think what working people have been through. They were told, we're all in it together. Then they paid for a mess made by banks. They cried out for economic change in a referendum, but saw their calls go unanswered. And they united to defeat a deadly virus, only to see the government break the rules that they respected. And now, a winter like no other. The biggest hit to living standards in British history, where millions, the length and breadth of our country, will go without food or heating. Once again, asked to pay the price. Don't get me wrong, I know people in this room are struggling too. Your borrowing rates, through the roof. Energy costs, astronomical. More small businesses going under now than at any time since records begun. And I know that every single one is a personal tragedy, an ambition, a dream, an investment in a better future gone. No mistake, it's tough, and it will be tough for a while. But that's why we need to answer the burning question. What will we do differently? How will we help restore the contract that says, work hard and Britain will give you a fair chance? Because let me tell you, that's not how working people feel about our country right now. Not this winter. So this has to be a turning point. Britain needs a new business model. And that will be hard. Changing a business model is hard. You all know that. Nonetheless, it's time for all of us, government, business, trade unions, to get behind the idea, both basic and radical, that our country can grow in a way that serves working people, that higher productivity can come from unlocking their potential, and that we can work together to put their interests first. This has to be the common goal of our partnership, and it must set a new direction on growth, a new way of governing that at times is challenging our instincts and will challenge our instincts. No more trickle-down experiments. That idea has been tested to destruction. But equally, if the South-East races ahead, redistribution can't be the one-word plan for the rest of Britain. You can grow an economy that way, of course you can. But it's not enough. Working people want growth from the grassroots, jobs that are well paid and secure, communities standing on their own feet, public services strong enough to help them succeed. So I promise you now, my Labour government will care, must care, as much about raising productivity everywhere as we've done in the past about redistribution. We're going to throw everything at growing our collective contribution, our productive capacity in every community. And that takes us inevitably to the supply side of the economy. That's why our first priority on tax has always been to scrap business rates. We will level the playing field for our high streets. And with help from Lord Jim O'Neill, we'll make Britain the best place in the world to start a new business. But we also need to look at the supply side differently. It's not just about tax and enterprise. Take the current state of our labour market. So much of this comes back to our public services. Yes, there are other factors. But you can't tell me that the number of older people falling out of work has got nothing to do with the millions stuck on NHS waiting lists. Or that the growing number of people suffering with mental health isn't a drag on our productivity. No. The state of our public services is an economic crisis just as much as a social crisis. So we will launch the biggest training programme since the creation of the NHS. Increase capacity with more doctors, more nurses, more health visitors. Reform the employment service to get more people back to work. Give everyone who needs it access to mental health treatment within 4 weeks. And build a modern childcare system that supports parents, especially women, to flourish. This is what the US Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, calls modern supply-side economics. And that's the philosophy that will drive us to do the hard yards on growth. But we'll also need to be pragmatic on the basic lack of people. We won't ignore the need for workers to come to this country. We can't have a situation, as we did with HGV drivers, where temporary shortages threaten to cripple entire sectors of our economy. That would be anti-growth, and it would be anti-business. But I want to be clear here. With my Labour government, any movement in our points-based migration system, whether via the skilled worker route or the shortage occupations list will come alongside new conditions for business. We will expect you to bring forward a clear plan to boost skills and more training, for better pay and condition, for investment in new technology. Now, we can talk about how this is done. Dialogue is at the heart of partnership. But negotiation with trade unions will be part of it. I said at the TUC conference, my Labour Party is unashamedly pro-business. And I say here today that trade unions must be a crucial part of our partnership. But our common goal must be to help the British economy off its immigration dependency, to start investing more in our partnership. But our common goal must be to help the British economy off its immigration dependency. And the Labour Party will never diminish the contribution it makes to our economy, to public services, to your businesses and our communities. But let me tell you, the days when low pay and cheap labour are part of the British way on growth must end. This isn't about Brexit. All around the world, business is waking up to the fact we live in a new era for labour. And while they're adapting, our low growth model is holding us back. It's why we've set out a new deal for working people that will deliver higher pay, stronger rights and better work. Not just for social justice, but also for the new reality on growth. Let me give you an example. Technology. Britain has fewer industrial robots than almost every comparable country. We're behind Germany, France, Spain, Slovenia, Slovakia, Belgium. It's a long list. And in terms of competition over the long run, one that borders on disaster. Now, I know most businesses get this. I've seen for myself how you invest in your people and their productivity. At Vaillant in Derbyshire, I met the apprentices using their skills in conjunction with the new technologies of heat pumps. That technology will continue to adapt, but those apprentices will be at the forefront of that change, working today, training for the opportunities of the future. But when we look at the economy as a whole, it can seem like we're more comfortable hiring people to work in low-pay, insecure, sometimes exploitative contracts than we are in investing in the new technology that delivers for workers, productivity, and our country. And we can't compete like that. Britain's low-pay model has to go. It doesn't serve working people. It's not compatible with grassroots growth. So let me tell you what is. The three big priorities for my Labour government, the principles our partnership must deliver to drive Britain forward. They are: 1, economic stability; 2, higher skills; 3, green growth. Let me take them one by one, starting with economic stability. Because, as you know, stability is the bedrock. Everything else depends on it. If we've learned nothing else these past 12 years, it's that chaos has a cost. That's why every policy under my Labour Party announced will always be fully costed. We're determined to reduce debt as a share of our economy. Sound money in our public finances must come first. And we accept what this means. Accept that we won't be able to do things, good Labour things, as quickly as we would like. The lesson of the last few months is stark. Lose control of the economy, and it's businesses and working people who pick up the bill. And I won't let that happen again. But real economic stability has to be about more than public finances. It has to be about providing the right conditions to plan and invest, to think about long-term strategy, not just short-term fixes, to create confidence through certainty. That's the argument for partnership. It's why we're so committed to a modern industrial strategy. It's not about the size of the state. It's about what the state does, how it supports businesses to innovate and grow, brings in the creative brilliance of our scientists and universities, applies them to creating the industries of the future, and uses whatever tool the job requires. Procurement, R&D investment, patient finance, a strategic plan for infrastructure and supply chains, led by an institution, a new industrial strategy council that sits outside the political cycle. Now, I know this isn't the sort of stuff that sets Westminster pulses racing, not a bit of it. But I can tell you this, in every one of our competitors, it's the bread and butter of responsible economic management. Now, yesterday, I went on the Gov UK website in search of the government's industrial strategy. This is what I found. It says, reading from it, the aim of the industrial strategy was to boost productivity by backing businesses to create good jobs. Was. And scratched across the top is one word, I kid you not, archived. Archived. Doesn't that just tell you everything? The government has archived Britain's growth. That's why situations like British Volt keep happening. Why the CEO of Johnson Matthey says we're falling behind in the race for clean hydrogen. Why electric car manufacturers are leaving Britain in droves. Our aversion to proper long-term industrial strategy is costing us billions already. But even worse, it's costing us the foundations of a more prosperous future. And conference, so will the status quo on skills. Any serious plan for growth must accept the need to transform how our country trains people for work. That's why we're committed to changing the way government supports businesses to get the skills that you need. At this conference last year, I announced that Lord Blunkett would lead our Council of Skills Advisors. And this year, I'm pleased to announce that he's delivered that report and we're going to deliver on skills. The apprenticeship levy is not flexible enough. Now, don't get me wrong. Apprenticeships are a gold standard qualification. Their record in tackling the cultural snobbery associated with vocational learning is second to none. But alongside them, we also need to fund the training that works for you. The need for technology short courses that train coders in weeks, that help younger workers get promoted. The training that supports older workers to flourish, or retrain as something new. And let me tell you from personal experience, there's nothing wrong with changing your career in your mid-50s. But the bottom line is this. You need more control over what training your levy can buy. With Labour, that's exactly what you will get. And we'll devolve the power and money on adult skill budgets as well. Decisions that drive growth in communities should be made by people with skin in the game. I profoundly believe that the people and businesses of Birmingham know what training the economy of Birmingham needs. And the same is true in Wolverhampton and Wrexham, Peterborough and Portsmouth. The next Labour government will spread economic power to the grassroots. And our central industrial mission, clean power by 2030, will help us do it. Climate change is the defining social challenge of our times. There's no question about that. I'm sure it scores highly on the risk register of every company in this room. But if you take only one thing from today, let it be this. I don't see climate change as a risk. I see it as an opportunity. the biggest chance we've had in a generation to make our economy work for working people. That's what our Green Prosperity Plan is all about. A plan to make Britain a green growth superpower, to invest in wind, solar, nuclear, hydrogen, green steel and carbon capture, new opportunities for plumbers, electricians, engineers, software designers, technicians, builders, insulation for 19 million homes, and Great British Energy, a new national champion that will take advantage of the opportunities in clean British power and turn them into good, secure, well-paid British jobs. You can never say it enough. Clean British power is cheaper than imported fossil fuels, 9 times cheaper. If we have more of it, businesses and working people will get cheaper bills. The country enjoys independence from tyrants like Putin, and we give every community a shot at the green jobs of the future. Clean hydrogen in South Yorkshire, Merseyside and the east of England. Offshore wind in Scotland, Teesside, eastern North Yorkshire. Solar power growing rural communities in the southeast, the southwest, and yes, here in the Midlands. It won't be easy, we know that. On planning, on Ofgem's remit, on getting ahead of demand issues with the grid, we not only see the battles ahead, we'll run towards them. Because nothing reeks of decline more than the idea Britain no longer knows how to build things. I won't accept that. And with real partnership, we'll win. The same is true on finance. Big ambitions require public investment, and we will provide it. But we know that the real game changer is private investment, and that this is the perennial challenge for British productivity. That's why we'll also set up a national sovereign wealth fund and use it to manage risk on the critical investments we need to become a green growth superpower, but also to create spillover opportunities for businesses and supply chains right across the country in manufacturing and services. That is what an industrial strategy and partnership must deliver in a nutshell. A new way of managing our economy, a fresh start for Britain. And it's a divide with the government. Last week, you saw the sum total of their offer on growth. Stagnation dressed up in the clothes of stability. Decline paraded as tough decisions. Tough decisions will be challenging their party on planning, on onshore wind, on industrial strategy. But they don't have it in them. Don't understand that to be a careful steward of the economy in a volatile world, you need to be proactive, need to intervene to secure stability and growth. I'll put it simply. Every business in this room has a strategy for growth. A nation needs one too. Because the headwinds we face, climate change, artificial intelligence, caring for an aging society, mean that a hands-off approach just isn't fit for purpose anymore. And I'm not going to give up on growth that easily. I believe in our country. I believe in our businesses, and I believe in our people. Britain deserves better. A new partnership for prosperity. The path to a greener, fairer, more dynamic country. To higher wages, higher skills, higher productivity. To leading the world on the greatest challenge facing our planet. To give working people a sense of hope, aspiration, and possibility once again. Thank you, conference. Thank you.
Leader Keir Starmer addressing delegates there in Birmingham. He will now take questions from the audience, as did Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister. So let's stay with these live pictures now.
Thank you very much. We're going to take some questions, and I'm going to start with the media. So I'm hoping we've got Alex Forsyth from the BBC here with us. Alex.
Hello, Sir Keir. Thank you. Alex Forsyth, BBC News. You talk about the need for businesses to invest in skills and training in the UK workforce, but that will take time. And you would have heard from business leaders here about crippling labour shortages now that are hampering growth. So how far would your pragmatic approach go in terms of increasing immigration in the short term? And how much is your stance on this driven by political considerations as much as economic ones?
Well, Alex, just let me take the final part of that question first, because I am utterly frustrated at the short-term fixes. What we've had for the last 12 years is the repetition of the same argument, whether it's on energy, whether it's on skill shortages, which is, what are you going to do in the here and now? Don't address the mid-term and the long-term. And we keep going round and round this circle. The crisis is now sticking plaster, never the medium and the long-term. And that is holding us back. So I believe profoundly in the argument I'm making about skills here. I remember back in 2015, when I first came into politics, I was the Shadow Immigration Secretary. I'm a glutton for punishment. But talking to many people in this room, we had a discussion about skills, and it's not dissimilar to the discussion we're having today. So if we always see this as a short-term fix, I will be pragmatic, of course I do. I don't want a repeat of what we saw last year with HGV drivers. I get that. As I say, that's anti-growth and anti-business. But we have to address the medium and the long term. And it's a feature of the last 12 years that we haven't got to grips with the medium and the long term. And that will hold us back. And that's why, of course, we'll be pragmatic. Of course, we understand that we need to act now so that we help business and drive growth. But we have to address and run towards the challenge that is skills, run towards the challenge that is ensuring we have everybody back in the workforce, because there are hundreds of thousands of people who aren't working now who were working just a few years ago. And so this is, for me, an economic argument, not a question of political tactics. Thank you, Alex. I think we have Aubrey from The Guardian.
Hello, Sir Keir. You alluded in your speech to the importance that you want to place on economic stability. Can you be a bit more frank with the public and business leaders in this room about the sorts of policies that you think you won't be able to implement as quickly as you would like if Labour wins the next general election?
Well, Aubrey, I'm not going to draft the next Labour manifesto here on stage, but what I am saying this, and it's a very important point for me to make to this audience, which is we will inherit an economy that's been damaged by the last 12 weeks and the last 12 years, and we need to fundamentally accept that as an incoming government. Restoring stability is key. There's a cost to instability, and we've been paying that cost over the last few weeks and over the last few years. That means restoring faith in our institution. It means clear fiscal rules. We've set out that we'll pay for day-to-day, that we want debt down as a percentage of our economy. But, you know, that stability has to be our first priority. If that means that there are things which, good Labour things, I say, which we can't do as quickly as we would like, then that is a consequence of that security. But I will not give up on growth. That's why I've said what I've said about the investment that we need, the approach we need to skills, and getting people back into the workforce and innovation. But do we need to restore faith, restore stability? Aubrey, yes, we do. Do I accept that as an incoming government, it's not good enough for me to simply say, well, they made the mess. We don't have to be responsible about clearing it up. We are going to have to be responsible about clearing it up. Clear fiscal rules. Do I accept that that means that there are good Labour things that, as an incoming government, we won't be able to do as quickly as we'd like? Yes, I do accept that. I'm not going to spell it out now, but that's the conversation we want to have over the coming months as we go into that general election. Thank you, Aubrey. Lizzie, I think, from Bloomberg.
Keir Starmer there, taking questions. Actually, let's just pull away from Birmingham and just get an update with our political correspondent, David Wallace, Lockhart. Interesting response from the audience there, and an admission, an obvious admission from the Labour leader, that if they were to win power, the outlook may be grim now, but it's going to be grim following the next election as well.
Yeah, and that's something we've been hearing from Labour quite a lot in recent weeks. That line Keir Starmer deployed there of realising that a Labour government isn't going to be able to do everything it would like to do as quickly as it would like to do. And they're both blaming the recent economic turmoil we saw, of course, in the wake of that mini budget and 12 years, as they see it, of economic mismanagement by Conservative governments. But Keir Starmer, I think we can tell from that speech, really striking a positive pro-business tone, certainly moving on, I think, from how Labour would have been perceived by the big business community in recent years. He talked about it being a party of being pro-business. He talked specifically about profit, saying he respected the idea of profit and what it does for jobs, for growth and for taxpayers. And of course, the main part of Keir Starmer's speech that was briefed out quite a bit in advance to the media there was what he had to say about immigration. And he's talking about the economy having to get over this idea of relying on cheap immigration dependence, that idea of I suppose, as some would see it, having been in recent years when the UK was part of the European Union and the free movement that came with that. He talked about the points-based system he wants to have, where you would be able to, as a business, bring in skilled workers and bring in occupations that were on shortage lists. But he also said there would be a price that business would be expected to pay for that, in terms of spelling out exactly what they were doing to train people, spelling out exactly what they were doing to invest in new technologies. And I thought also quite interesting, Keir Starmer did cover some more traditional Labour ground within this speech to the business community, talking about the idea of investing in the health services, in mental health services, in childcare, and selling that as an idea that would help with productivity. So perhaps on more traditional Labour ground there, but trying to spell out to a business community why it's in their interest to see him as Prime Minister, because ultimately he believes that would help with productivity. And I think we're seeing there is a confidence from the Labour leader talking to the business community, believing that's a community he's now in a position to win over. And of course the Conservatives might be looking at that with some nervousness, realising that this was traditionally perhaps a room that they would have more prospects of winning over, but now saying that there's perhaps a bit of a fight going on, perhaps to get the CEOs in the room backing their political party.
Yeah, interesting also in terms of the language, obviously state investment, which you would associate with Labour, but Keir Starmer stressing also private investment, the pro-business side of the party, a personal conviction for him. When it comes, though, to energy, for example, he mentioned again the Great British Energy, a state-owned company. He also talked about a sovereign wealth fund. How will that go down with business?
Well, these are certainly areas where Keir Starmer is perhaps on more traditional Labour ground, with the idea of the state stepping into areas where we've become used to the private sector dominating. Energy is a particularly interesting area at the moment because, of course, we've seen with what's happened with shocks on a global scale with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that it has upset the market and how it's been working in recent years. And there probably is more consideration that perhaps state intervention, which, let's face it, we've seen every day on our bills in recent months, is more required now than it's been at any time. But what's also interesting, when Keir Starmer spoke about this, he brought in the idea of opportunities for the private sector when it came to a Labour government. For example, he talks about wanting to retrofit a lot of homes throughout the country, the idea of insulating them so that they become more energy efficient and ultimately need to use less energy. And he was selling that as an idea of opportunity for the private sector, of the jobs, the investment that would be created by a Labour government wanting to do that. So certainly I think trying to strike a balance between the idea of traditional Labour values and being pro-business. But I don't think Keir Starmer leaving that audience in any doubt that his attitude towards business in the UK is certainly a sympathetic, a warm, a pro-business stance.
David, yes, thank you very much.